We have already been through 12 weeks of football, and we are finally at week 13. It's rivalry week here in the 2KU. Welcome to the 2KU Weekly Podcast, where we have another thrilling episode ahead of you. I'm Type A Joy 101, joined as always by Danny V and the Pig Bear. And what a season it's been. We have one more week of action coming your way, and it looks not to disappoint. I'm going to hand it off to Danny as he reads off our headlines for this week.
First up, TCU in their stormtrooper outfits at the Empire Strikes Back. TCU rolls into the Smurf turf on a snowy day and beats the Broncos. In other news, did you know that Virginia Tech's really good at making walls because their defense held back Clemson super well done. The Tigers got busted. Vanderbilt went into Auburn Stadium, Jordan-Hare Stadium, and upset the War Eagles, moving to 5-6. And finally, we have a brand new record for everyone here at home. Welcome to LA, the Washington State Cougars, as they survive a 9 overtime game to upset Stanford.
What a game. We'll get to that at the end of a gauntlet of interesting scores we have ahead of us. We're going to get things started with just the wettest thud of a game I think we've seen on stream. I've already made my peace with this performance, and obviously there was a lot of bad luck that went into it. Clemson, number 9 in the country, heading to Blacksburg to take on Virginia Tech. Spirits were high. Hopes were hoping, as they usually do. I don't know what I was trying to say there. There was a lot of hope for Clemson. A game that looked like would finally be their time, and then Travis Heller goes down with an injury. And at that point, backup comes in. Virginia Tech had already been dominating on defense so far, but it just seemed to get worse. Second pass that the new backup Tony Moore threw, interception. And it just looks like this game completely reset Clemson. 31-17 the final. It seemed that everything that they tried, it seemed like the whole universe was pushing them to try and win, and they just couldn't. They couldn't even get close in this game. Danny?
Yeah, it was impressive for Virginia Tech to be as dominant as they were. So I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia Tech is sitting there happy, celebrating, and preparing themselves for one more game and hopefully not getting too hungover.
Pig Bear? Pig Bear?
Pig Bear.
Does Heller have an extra year of eligibility?
Heller is a senior. He's off next season.
What if he's out for the season? Can he take a medical redshirt?
He is back for next week.
Is he?
He was knocked out of the game, but he returns next week for the game against South Carolina.
Okay, good. All right. Tough loss. You got to rebound next week. But yeah, tough loss. Horrible loss. But you got to rebound.
Virginia Tech 11-0 heads to Charlottesville next week. Meanwhile, Clemson now falling to 8-3 has knocked themselves out of the championship race. Their last game of the season will be against South Carolina. Up next, a heated battle in the freezing cold of Boise, Idaho. The number 7 Boise State Broncos and the number 11 TCU Horned Frogs clashed in our second stream game of that night. It really came down to the wire. Boise was efficiently driving down the field, recovering an onside kick, which I usually have to come in and assist with that. They did it themselves. But they kept chugging down the field in a frigid environment. Good play after good play. A minute left on the clock. They get into the red zone. Last play of the game, a second to go. They need 2 yards. Quarterback throws short. It's caught, and he stopped a yard before the end zone. 27-21. TCU on the road steals it away and spoils Boise State's party on senior night. Danny?
Yeah, TCU did a great job playing this game, and I'm sure Boise State was expecting they would be the one to camouflage, but TCU's clean white outfits camouflage them right in the snow.
Pig Bear?
I've got something to show y'all in here. I got something to show y'all really quick. It relates, I promise you. I got this. I got a TCU shirt on right now.
All right.
I had hope, and they got the upset on the road.
And you picked the shirt, or did you have the shirt on last night for the game?
No, actually, yeah, I slept in it. The shirt I slept in.
Well, I guess it was a good luck charm in that case.
Yeah.
We can't see it on stream, obviously, but we can see it in call. Don't forget to join
the official Taipei Joey Discord.
Don't forget
right now.
Don't forget to join the Taipei Joy 101 Discord for scores live, calls occasionally, as well as stream exclusive games. We have one coming up on Friday. We'll talk about. It's going to be a fun time, for sure. And it's TCU that'll be involved with it. The Horned Frogs head back home to Fort Worth to play Baylor up next. Meanwhile, Boise State heads on the road to New Mexico to wrap their season. They're not out of the race yet. They need a win and a Utah loss to make it to the conference championship game and potentially have a rematch against TCU. Meanwhile, Conference USA Championship was locked a week ago, but we get a little bit of a preview taste here. Number 6 UCF, number 23 SMU. The Knights were the better team in this match. Even heading to Dallas, they seemed completely calm and composed. The Knights improved to 11-0 with a 28-10 win over SMU. This ties their best record in school history back in 2018 when they had 11 regular season wins. As for SMU, their last game of the season is against North Texas. They are favored in that. And UCF hopes to finish this season for the first time undefeated as they take on USF in the War on I-4. And obviously, we'll be seeing both of these two teams again in Birmingham on Championship Week, December 2nd. Danny?
Oh, Knights, Arjon. What a great win for UCF. And I got to tell you this, it's really loud. It's ruckus here in Orlando, and it's going to be intense for whichever BCS bowl game UCF could go to if they win out.
Pig Bear?
Hey, one good for UCF. Keep fighting. Heck, maybe the Natty waits.
It is a long shot for UCF to make the national championship, but if certain chaos falls in their hands like USC had it last year, they could play it. Conference USA team has never won the national championship. Last time they had a chance at it was 2008 with UAB. We now move on to SEC football, a ranked matchup. Number 18 Georgia heading to Starkville, where a number 25 squad in Mississippi State notched up an impressive win over the Bulldogs, 35-34. All right, Mississippi State now looking to be the best team in the SEC West, and they are a team who needed some good fortune to come their way at some point. We've mentioned this stat before. Their last SEC championship, you have to go back to 1946. They've never played in the SEC championship game. Maybe all that changes this week. They head to the Egg Bowl, but they're going to need some assistance with losses by Auburn and Tulane in order to make it. As for Georgia, they've successfully nosedived themselves potentially out of the top 25 and certainly out of the SEC championship race. What happened with this Georgia team? They seem so locked in, and now everything just keeps falling apart for them in high speed. Danny?
Yeah, it's kind of like what happened to Deion Sanders. I mean, they got themselves some high hopes. They were performing really well, and then they hit a wall. And then from there, they weren't able to recover from it. They just kept spiraling until they are where they are now.
Hey, give this Georgia team some credit. At least they were winning.
That's true.
Pig Bear?
Yeah. There's a famous soft drink from the state of Georgia I'm sure everyone knows. You take one letter out of it, it becomes choke, which is the official drink of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Take one letter out of it. What letter are you taking out of it where it gets an H?
Actually, adding an H. My bad.
All right.
That's dyslexia for you.
This is grammar with the 2K Weekly Podcast. Mississippi
Choke, the
State,
official drink of
Auburn, and Tulane are going to make an interesting race. We'll check in with the Auburn Tigers later because they could have clinched this week. But right now, I'm going to hand it off to Danny for our 2KU Dave Show Inside Look.
Dave Show. Ups and downs this roller coaster has went. They went and they just came out of being demolished by Virginia Tech, and they were sitting 4-6. They welcomed in their rivals, Florida State, for the Battle of the Gnomes. And Dave Show didn't disappoint. They beat the Seminoles in Orlando 24-6. Now they improved the season to 5-6 with one more chance to get into a bowl game. Can they do it? Well, we gotta see soon. But disappointment season for Florida State and Miami, and well, hopefully Dave Show can finish off with a win.
Miami awaits the Truckers, a difficult game any year, even though Miami has been struggling. But Dave Show is favored in that matchup. A confident win, though, for the Truckers, 24-6 over the Seminoles, who have just had a awful year this season. And speaking of awful years, things haven't been that great for Tennessee. They are expecting just a nice, relaxing cupcake week against East Tennessee. Dave Show would know a thing or two about relaxing cupcake weeks, having just been a victim of one. Hi, Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
They were just expecting an easy game against East Tennessee State, a school out in Johnson City, a little bit further out. I assume further out east. I don't know the exact geography.
Yeah, it's out east. It's more out east.
But they assumed it would be a simple task.
Yeah, I think they paid something like $2 million for Eastern Tennessee to come in. Like an easy cupcake game.
Yeah, East Tennessee gets the win, 31-23. This pushes Tennessee now to 1-9. This is the second worst season the Volunteers have seen. This includes a 2019 campaign where they went 0-12. Their next game on the horizon is Vanderbilt, a Vanderbilt team which we'll also touch on later. Danny, your thoughts?
Wow, just what a disaster! I think the athletic department might be about to pay this Tennessee coach his buyout money real soon. I don't know if it's going to be today or tomorrow or maybe even next week if they lose against their in-state rival. So if I'm Tennessee, I'm just expecting that paycheck soon.
Pig Bear?
What a way for the Buccaneers of East Tennessee State to go and embarrass the Law in Tears. Not volunteer, LOL, Law in Tears. It's horrible. Tennessee is a blue blood program. It's hard to, maybe a blue blood program, let's be completely honest here. But they have history. There's no denying the Volunteers have history. But oh my gosh, 1-9 and a loss to East Tennessee State. My goodness.
We actually have a check-in with their current head coach. Tennessee's head coach Travis Green. 2023 is his final year of his contract. His last game, potentially as a Volunteer, is this week against Vanderbilt. He was already on the hot seat entering this season, and this is not helping his case. On a lighter note, we head to the ACC. College Park, the Maryland Terrapins are fighting for their life in bowl eligibility. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech also fighting for their life, but to make the ACC championship. What seemed like a long shot, not even 5 weeks ago, has now proven to become a potential reality, thanks to Virginia getting a 30-27 win on the road against Maryland. Virginia Tech has now gone from 3-3 to now winning 5 straight. They are now 8-3 on the year. They have lost once in conference, that was to Duke, who with Virginia's win and Clemson's loss, the Blue Devils, by the way, have now made the ACC championship. This will be their first time in the ACC championship game. But regardless, the second spot is still open, between two Virginia schools as it comes down to the matchup in Blacksburg, or in Charlottesville, between VT and UVA. Danny?
Yeah, I'm impressed with Virginia. They didn't even make a bowl game last season, and here they are, potentially on the glimpse of claiming a ticket in Charlotte. So for Virginia to do this, he could potentially win big. And well, there has been kind of a tendency of some teams, get a bit hung over from big wins. So let's see if Virginia could catch the Hokies by surprise.
Yeah, Pig Bear?
Yeah, it's shocking that Virginia's made this run, but hey, they got a big one with the Hokies, local rivalry on the ACC network, so that's gonna be interesting.
The last time Virginia made the conference championship was in 2012. They lost to Florida State. Their last conference championship as a whole was in 2006. And Virginia Tech needs no introduction. They've won the last 3 straight ACC championships. That'll be an interesting fight. Maryland, on the other hand, now holding on to now 4-7. They need a win against Navy to be anywhere close to a bowl consideration. That would put them at 5-7. Now we move back to the SEC as Vanderbilt stunning number 12 Auburn 23-16 in Jordan-Hare. That's the name of the stadium there, Danny. Number 12 Auburn would have clinched the SEC West with a win. Instead, now with their loss and wins by Tulane and Mississippi State over Georgia and Tulane getting a win over Ole Miss, this now leaves the door open. Auburn wins, they clinch it this week. However, if they lose to Alabama in the Iron Bowl, that leaves it up to either Mississippi State or Tulane. If one of them loses, or if Tulane loses, Mississippi State is in. However, Tulane and Mississippi State both win. The Green Wave get the edge, which now leaves Auburn in a precarious spot. You gotta win the Iron Bowl. Right, Danny?
Yeah, that Auburn, looked like they were going to clinch the SEC West. Anyway, since they had tiebreakers against everyone, all they had to do was win one game. They would have been it. Here they are, surviving by their life and hoping that they don't get jumped by Mississippi State or Tulane, potentially. So, will Auburn do it? Hopefully. But they have a big game this weekend.
Pig Bear?
Bama.
Yeah, Auburn's in shambles. Reminds me of something else Auburn's in real life, too, but who knows? Vanderbilt's no New Mexico State.
A 2KU friend of the show. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt won 4 straight. Won 4 straight at one point in the year. They started the season 4-1 before losing another 4, or losing 5 straight with a bye in the middle. They now could make a bowl game with a win over Tennessee. Meanwhile, we finish with 2 Pac-10 games that have, count them, 16 combined overtimes. First, Washington beating Arizona 38-30 in 7 overtimes. The Washington Huskies needed a win to stay in bowl eligibility conversations. They now jump to 4-7. And then as for Arizona, they're now at 1-10. They have one more conference game against Arizona State. As for our second game, this was important. This was effectively a pseudo-elimination game. Win and you're in the conference championship. And the team that made the leap was Washington State, number 22 in the country, upsetting number 13 Stanford 48-40 in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 overtimes. This is a brand new record this season, in a season full of overtimes. The longest game in 2KU history. This game kicked off This game kicked off from the 10:30 time slot. It ended at about 10:30 p.m. EST was the kickoff. It would have ended at about 3 in the morning.
It's about midnight over there.
That is without exception one of the most bizarre, one of the longest, and maybe one of the greatest games 2K has seen. Danny?
Yeah, Washington State. They only have like 3 wins last year, I believe, and here they are clinching a ticket to LA to play against Oregon. Like, wow, that's impressive for Washington State. And if I'm the Cougars, I'll be celebrating, and hopefully, maybe they could get to a BCS game soon.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, what a game. Imagine staying up. Imagine being an East Coast Washington State fan.
However many of those there are.
Yeah, he's and you have to stay till 3 a.m. to see your game finish, and you gotta get up. What a game!
Thankfully, it's on a Saturday.
Yeah,
Both these teams have classic rivals in their sights next week. Stanford heading to Berkeley to take on a Cal team that has been white hot as of late. They've won their last 4 straight, including Arizona State, USC, and UCLA in a stretch. Meanwhile, Washington State plays the Apple Cup against Wazoo. Washington State plays the Apple Cup against Washington, the team we mentioned before, who's looking 4-7, who needs a win to stay in bowl conversations. All right, now we're going to head to our top 25 this week. And with a lot of shakeups and a lot of stories being told, this might be a little weird. All right, you'll have to stick with me. There is a new number 1. We haven't seen a new number 1 since the national championship week last season. Oklahoma State had held that spot for now 13 straight poll weeks. But now, Virginia Tech usurps them as the new number 1. Oklahoma State is now at 2. Oregon, Penn State, and Florida make up your top 5 still. Number 6 is UCF out of the Conference USA still. Baylor jumps a spot to number 7, which is a very scary number to be. Just ask the last team TCU played, which is Boise, who was number 7 last week. Number 8 is Utah, who jumps 2 spots. Also from the Mountain West, number 9, TCU, leaping into the top 10. And wrapping up the top 10 is Boston College. Out of the Big East, they play a game against Syracuse this week. Number 11 and 12 coming from the Big Ten, 2 teams who are desperately in need of wins to make the conference championship. Coming up, those are Michigan at 11 and Wisconsin at 12. Michigan, of course, playing Ohio State, and Wisconsin playing Minnesota. Wisconsin wins and they're in. However, Michigan wins and Wisconsin loses, then they get in. There is still an opportunity for another team we'll talk about later. And number 13 is Duke, who jumps big thanks to Clemson's loss and their win, and notching them in the ACC championship. For the first time since 2021, Boise State has left the top 10. The Broncos are now seated at number 14, falling after their loss to TCU by a yard, I should mention. And number 15 out of the Big East is Pitt. Pitt and West Virginia will be tangling for the final conference championship spot and the title of the South Division. Number 16, falling like a rock this week, is Clemson. 7 spots makes them our biggest faller on the week. Number 17, also falling a lot, is Auburn, who lost to Vanderbilt. Number 18, West Virginia, of course, playing Pittsburgh in the good old backyard brawl. Number 19, Washington State, clinching a spot in the Pac-10 championship. That definitely helps them, as well as their win over Stanford. And now at number 20, back in the top 20 out of the WAC, is New Mexico State. The Aggies, I believe, the Aggies played New Mexico this week and got a win on Friday. Their next stop is their final in-conference matchup with rival UTEP. Number 21, Mississippi State, jumping a little, but still enough to make an impression. They can clinch the SEC West with a win and a Tulane loss. With a win and Tulane and Auburn losses. Number 22 is Kansas into the top 25 for the first time this season. They made the top 25 last year for a little bit. That season ended up with them in a Holiday Bowl, but there is a path for Kansas to make the Big 12 championship. It's not likely, and they're going to need some help, but the chance is still there. Number 23 is Jacksonville State. Continuing from last week, they are the American Conference champions. They got a win over Tarleton State this week. The Gamecocks are looking exciting. Number 24 in their lowest position since we started simming 2KU is Stanford. They lost to Washington, and now they're on the cusp of falling out of the top 25. Or Washington State. And now they're on the cusp of falling out of the top 25. And at that last spot, at 25, is Virginia for the first time on 2KU streams. The Cavaliers are 8-3 on the year and can clinch the ACC championship with a win over number 1 Virginia Tech. The teams bouncing out of the top 25 are Georgia and SMU, who lost to Mississippi State and UCF respectively. Other teams receiving votes this week are BYU, UTSA, Appalachian State, Utah State, Old Dominion, Tulane, Georgia, Alabama, Northern Illinois, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, SMU, Southern Illinois, Louisville, and Kansas State. Danny, any thoughts about the top 25?
Yeah, just to talk about like a diverse top 25 and a lot of droppers, and well, this is probably like the second largest other receiving votes we've had since the preseason. So glad to see this many teams being represented at least.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, it's going crazy in the top 25, and I'm all for it.
All right, we'll hand it off to Danny real quick as he runs through the teams who have clinched and could clinch a bowl berth this week. Take it away.
What about a fun weekend it is, and this is the last call for all teams who want to get to a bowl game. For any teams who are currently sitting at 5 wins, this week is your last chance, unless you are one of the better 5 and 7 teams, and hopefully can make it in. But we got a lot of teams. Start off with Abilene Christian, who got their 7th win this season, which means they are guaranteed a lock to be in a bowl game, thanks to the FCS transition rules. Next up, out of the Conference USA, we have Arkansas with a big win against East Carolina. We have, their first ever bowl game in the FBS. It's Chicago in the Missouri Valley after having a big win at Western Illinois. We have Colgate, not the toothpaste brand, but the team who beat Navy. We go into a bowl game. Thanks to some special rules, the Ivy League, the top 3 teams of the Ivy League will be going to a bowl game. In this case, 2 of the Ivy League teams have already clinched their spots, Columbia and Princeton. The 3rd spot is still left open, and this weekend could be a big one to determine it. Next up, we have Hardin-Simmons out of the Southland. We have Idaho. We have Louisiana Tech, McNeese, Michigan State, Pacific, USC, Wake Forest, and Western Michigan, all claiming bold spot. And here comes the long list for the teams who are knocking outside. First, we got Cal, who will be playing at home against Stanford. Then we got Cal State Fullerton, playing at home against Long Beach. Now we got our favorite team of all time, the Dave Show Truckers, going on the road to Miami. We got Eastern Kentucky, who is at 6 wins, but transition, so they need to have 7 wins to be guaranteed a lock to be in a bowl game. But thankfully, since there are 6, if there are any spots left, they will be automatically brought up to the bowl eligibility. But they play against Austin Peay. Next up, we have Furman, who had themselves one of the scores out of the weekend, where they beat Western Carolina 3-0.
Good game.
Heck
Good game.
yeah.
That is a
Go get
game. They got them to 5 wins, and here they are needing to beat the Citadel to get to bowl eligibility. Next, we got Illinois battling at Northwestern for Abe Lincoln's hat, the Trophy of Lincoln. We have Indiana playing against their in-state rival Purdue. Kennesaw, who is at 6 wins, but once again, because of transition rules, they need 7 to be locked, and they play against Jacksonville State, so good luck to them. We have Marshall playing at home against Ohio. You got Minnesota battling for the axe against Wisconsin and for bowl eligibility. You got the Battle of Nevada between Nevada and ULV. Both of these teams are at 5 wins, so this is the battle for bowl eligibility and for state bragging rights. The Nichols playing against Southeastern Louisiana. Northwestern State going to Central Michigan. Oklahoma, you are at 5 wins, and who are you going to need to beat to get to 6? Bedlam, Oklahoma State in Stillwater.
The former number one.
Next up, we have Pacific playing at home against, well, it should be Hawaii.
Hawaii, or Pacific's already clinched. It's weird to see Hawaii, though, that needs a win to clinch.
No, Hawaii already clinched.
Hawaii already clinched. Pacific already clinched, I thought.
Yep. Oops.
Yeah, Pacific is
off the list.
Yeah, Pacific won last week against Fresno State. They've already
Whoops.
They've already
clinched.
clinched.
Well, they're in. All right, next up we have Rutgers. Yeah, that's right. The Rutgers that was 1 point ranked in the top 25 needs to beat Delaware to go to a bowl game. South Dakota needs to beat South Dakota State, but also if they beat the Jackrabbits, there is a chance of a 6-6 South Dakota winning the division. That's fun. So you got UConn playing against Rhode Island to get the bowl eligibility. You have UMass going on the road to St. John's. You have UTEP playing at home against New Mexico State, one of their arch rivals. You got Vanderbilt playing at home against their in-state rival Tennessee. And finally, you got Washington Lee playing at home against VMI. Round out that list.
That is the list. It's crazy to see a team like Washington and Lee. We were also eagerly picking against. Now in bowl eligibility, it's incredible to see Pacific clinch and CSU Fullerton can clinch with a win over Pacific. It's great, or with a win over Long Beach. It's great to see these teams who had struggled for quite a long time finally making it back to the promised land. Who do you think has the easiest and hardest routes of the teams here?
For the easiest routes, I do think that would have to be UMass. They're playing against a pathetic St. John's. And pathetic is a heavy understatement. As of now, St. John's is winless. Final game, so I think UMass has the easiest route. And for the hardest route, there's no doubt about it. It has to be Oklahoma. Going on the road to Oklahoma State. You can't get any tougher than that.
I like it.
Virginia Tech.
I like when it's cut and dry like that, you know? I like sometimes just knowing what we want and getting it quick. We're going to run real quick over some smaller teams in the whole universe. As you know, like last season, we like taking glimpses at lower levels of football. And we'll be having over the next few weeks a lot of fun with that. The Division III playoffs begin this Saturday in 2KU, and we're going to read you off the bracket. The bracket is separated into 6 regions with several conferences within it and up to 8 teams per region. The top 6 teams that advance through the brackets will be reseeded and play each other in the championship bracket in Salem, Virginia, where we reach the final known as the Stag Bowl. It all begins with Region 1, starting with the Newport, Rhode Island Regional, the number 1 team in the nation. The Sal Virginia Seahawks are 11-0. They'll play the 8-3 Husson Eagles. Our 4-5 on the bracket, the Gallaudet Bison and the Norwich Cadets. The 3-6, the Williams Fs at 10-1 take on the 7-4 Western Connecticut Wolves. And then the Alvernia Golden Wolves at 11-0, reigning national champions. They're the number 2 seed on this bracket, hosting the Reading, Pennsylvania Regional with their first game against Fitchburg State. Region 2, we start in Salisbury, Maryland with a heavy favorite to take home the national championship. The Salisbury Gulls are 11-0 on the year. They host Christopher Newport, who's 8-3. Gettysburg Bullets play Cortland State. In the 4-5, the 8-3 Bullets host the 7-4 Cortland State squad, who I forgot their nickname, I'm going to be honest. On to the Rochester Regional, the Lycoming Warriors are 8-3, taking on the 7-4 Carnegie Mellon Tartans. Any of you college football historian buffs might recognize that Carnegie Mellon name. Meanwhile, the host of the bracket, the Rochester Yellow Jackets, are 9-2, taking on the best-ranked at-large team, the 9-2 St. John Fisher Cardinals. I forgot to mention it, but the top teams are all of the conference champions. In this bracket's case, it was 1 through 6, and any teams remaining would be your at-larges. As we move on to the South bracket, there are only 4 conferences in that, so we get quite a bit more variety. Starting with the number 1 in the bracket, the Mary Hardin Baylor Crusaders at 10-1, taking on the Greensboro Pride, who are 7-4. Southern Virginia, I believe the Southern Virginia Spartans or Trojans, correct me if I'm wrong. Southern Virginia is 7-4. They take on the Millsaps Majors, who are 9-2 on the year. That's the Belton, Texas Regional. Meanwhile, in the Sewanee, Tennessee Regional, the Bridgewater Eagles of Virginia taking on the Center of Kentucky Colonels, who are 9-2 and 8-3 respectively. The regional hosts, the Sewanee Tigers, are 10-1, taking on the Averett Cougars, who are 8-3. We now move on to Region 4, I believe. Yes, this would be Region 4. Starting in Holland, Michigan, the Hope Flying Dutchmen are 11-0. They were the runner-ups in the national championship last season. They take on the Muskingum Muskies. The DePaul Tigers are 9-2, taking on the 8-3 Baldwin Wallace Yellow Jackets. Rose Holman Engineers are 9-2, taking on the Kalamazoo Hornets. And a legendary squad in the Mount Union Purple Raiders are 10-1, hosting the Anderson Ravens. That bracket being in Alliance, Ohio. To Region 5, we start in Naperville, Illinois. The North Central Cardinals are 10-1. They host the 7-4 Elmhurst Blue Jays. The St. Norbert Green Knights had a pretty interesting run last season. They'll be taking on the Simpson Storm. And onto the Lincoln, Nebraska Regional, the Grinnell Pioneers of Iowa taking on the Wheaton, Illinois Thunder. Both teams are 9-2. And then our regional hosts the Nebraska Wesleyan Prairie Wolves at 9-2, taking on the Belvoir Buccaneers, who are 8-3. Now we reach Region 6, our final group. We head all the way out to Claremont, California, with the Pomona Pitzer Sage Hens, who are 11-0, taking on the Wisconsin at Stevens Point Pointers. The Whitworth Pirates out of Washington play the Augsburg Augies, who are 8-3 on the year out of the MIAC. Onto the Whitewater bracket, the Westminster Blue Jays of Missouri are 9-2, taking on the best at-large team in the nation, the Wisconsin Oshkosh Titans, who are 10-1. Their one loss was to the second team in this bracket, 11-0 Wisconsin Whitewater. The Warhawks take on the Occidental Tigers, who are 8-3. We'll be updating you on those scores on the 2KU Discord server, so don't forget to tune in on that. We'll be on our next stream. We'll discuss the Division II playoffs, and the week after that, the FCS playoffs. Pardon me about that. And now, we've been waiting for this moment for, I would say, the last month plus. It's always the big buzz of the season outside of the national championship discussion. Who's taking home the hardware, and who is taking home the Heisman? We've checked in periodically on the Heisman Trophy race, and now we're excited to bring you the 5 Heisman finalists. All right, beginning with Heisman finalist number 1, we have Andrew Burnett, quarterback out of Oregon, and what a career this guy has built up. He goes in as the odds-on favorite to take the Heisman Trophy, and honestly, why shouldn't he? 179.1 QBR, 228 for 367, 3,739 passing yards, 7 passing TDs, 7 rushing TDs, 24 rushing. Sorry, I can't read. 7 rushing touchdowns and 24 passing touchdowns, with 659 rushing yards onto his name. We saw him twice this season against USC and Stanford, and we'll be seeing him again in the Pac-10 championship game. Our second Heisman finalist is Maurice Powers, quarterback out of Penn State. 162.7 QBR, 230 for 369, 3,553 passing yards, 29 passing touchdowns, and 11 touchdowns on the ground. Powers is an electrifying back who is the lead man behind an improbable comeback by Penn State against Michigan, and has led the Nittany Lions to an 11-0 campaign so far. Our third Heisman finalist, electric on the ground and in the air, of course, is Travis Heller out of Clemson. 167.3 QBR, 158 for 258, 2,385 passing yards, 38 passing touchdowns, 107 rushing attempts for 657 yards, and 7 TDs on the ground. Heller's stock is damaged a little bit by the fact that he missed the last game, and now that his team is sitting out of the conference championship, there might be less of a chance for him to gain ground. His last game is against South Carolina, and it might impact his score just a little that we haven't seen him win on stream. Up next, our fourth finalist, our only running back in this field, Alan Bonner out of Oklahoma State. He had 171 carries this season for 936 yards, averaging 78 yards a game, 14 rushing touchdowns, as well as plenty of accolades in receiving. 38 catches for 441 yards and 4 touchdowns. Bonner is a true dual threat back and a key part of a dominant Oklahoma State squad. And our final guy, a bit of a dark horse, we stay in the Big 12, Derek Poe, quarterback out of Baylor. Talk about experience. This guy's been here his whole career. He's been a starter his whole career, and he's just built up a great resume. He played in the 2021 National Championship game. He was the starter last season, and in his final year at Baylor, he's put up a career performance. 148.6 QBR, 176 for 315, 2,435 passing yards, 142 rushing attempts for 637 yards, 29 passing TDs, and a rush touchdown to his name. And there are your 5 Heisman finalists. Andrew Burnett, quarterback from Oregon, Maurice Powers, quarterback from Penn State, Travis Heller, quarterback from Clemson, Alan Bonner, halfback for Oklahoma State, and Derek Poe, the quarterback for Baylor. I'm going to hand it off to you guys. Who do you think is the best player out of this field, Danny?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the player from Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's been doing really well, and I'm sure that he's also been like a great contribution to the team, and that he is helping Oklahoma State be at this point undefeated and potentially a BCS lock. So, especially if that they could get them their conference championship, they should be able to get it.
Pig Bear? Pig Bear?
Here.
All right, we'll step ahead here. The odds-on favorite is Burnett, followed by Powers, Bonner, Heller, and Poe. Oh, so plenty of great names that didn't make the list. If it wasn't for the one player per school rule, Terrence Noel, the running back for Oregon, certainly would have made it in. And Aaron Herron out of UCF was a great wideout that just missed the cut. There's Jarrett Fontaine from Georgia, Cody Crenshaw out of Auburn. A great performance this season by so many players, but there could only be 5, and these are your finalists. Now let's quickly glance over the conference races as we take a look at how many have closed, and how many spots are still for the taking. Briefly, we mentioned it about the ACC, but thanks to Clemson's loss and a win over North Carolina, Duke is now your first lock into the ACC championship. The 9-2 Blue Devils are 7-0 in conference play. And now we just need to see who will take home the black. Was the trophy between these two? Virginia Tech and Virginia.
I believe for the Mel Lunchbox. Let me just do a quick
is the Commonwealth Cup, I believe. Virginia could make an upset spot with the win in Charlottesville, and Virginia Tech, with a win, would be hoping for national championship ambitions.
It's the Commonwealth Cup.
All right. American was already clinched. The Big East. The Big East is still open, and it's all going to come down to this weekend. Boston College plays Syracuse for the top spot in the North, and Pitt and West Virginia play for the top spot in the South. As for the Big Ten, Penn State is locked in, thanks to their win over Notre Dame. The Lions are 11-0, 7-0 in conference play. They end their season on the road against Michigan State. Meanwhile, 3 teams are contending for that second spot. Wisconsin, it's very simple. Just win and you're in. However, it's easier said than done, and with a Minnesota squad that can be very challenging. Very challenging. They've given several teams a run for their money, including a Notre Dame squad that was expected to roll over them. And don't forget that 3 overtime clash they had against Illinois. Minnesota is very much a trap game. You got to watch out for that. Meanwhile, the other 2 teams with the spot are playing each other, Michigan and Ohio State. Battles in Columbus. The Buckeyes won last season. A win in Ann Arbor. And a win at home in Columbus would put the Buckeyes in position if Wisconsin were to lose. The winner of Ohio State, Michigan needs a Wisconsin loss to make it. As for the Big 12, Oklahoma State is locked in with their win. And thanks to everything else around them, I believe Baylor has locked in as well. The Bears played their final conference game this week against Colorado. And thanks to their win, they're flying high. So we'll get a rematch of Oklahoma State-Baylor. We almost saw a big upset here. We almost saw a big upset in this game just 2 weeks ago. And now we'll be seeing a rematch in Arlington. As for Conference USA is already locked, we have some news to report out of the Ivy League. Before we could even get odds down, we have an Ivy League champion. The Columbia Lions have gone 6-0 in conference play and have officially cemented themselves as Ivy League champions. They win their second straight chip in the league. They hadn't won an Ivy League title since 1992 before they won it last year, and now they've won back-to-back. This is their 9th title in Ivy League history, 4th all-time, only behind the juggernauts Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. The Lions will be playing in either the Fenway or Garden State Bowl in December. The only bowl they won't be was the Pinstripe Bowl since they played last season. On to the MAC. It's not a lock like we thought for the MAC West. Eastern Michigan is still the favorite. Is still on top, is still the favorite. They play a tough Northern Illinois squad looking to get back to the MAC championship with a win over the Eagles. Meanwhile, it all comes down to this week as well for the MAC East. Since Buffalo and Miami lost, it's now a battle of the wagon wheel, which will decide the division. Kent State and Akron are both 5-2 in conference play. In the Missouri Valley, Southern Illinois clinches their spot in the Missouri Valley Championship game. They hadn't played in the MVC title game since the very first one in 2014. Meanwhile, it's still anyone's game in the Missouri Valley West. South Dakota State is winning in. Northern Iowa is win. And Northern Iowa, you need a win and a South Dakota win. However, if South Dakota State wins and South Dakota wins and Northern Iowa loses, then 6-6 South Dakota will head back to the Missouri Valley Championship for the first time since their 2021 chip. Onto the Mountain West. And boy, has there ever been chaos here. We still have 5 teams that could make the conference championship. TCU with a win over Boise State put themselves in. However, everyone else behind them is still in good position. Utah is the favorite to make it. Boise State can get in with a win and Utah lost to BYU. New Mexico is in the same boat. Win and a Utah loss, and they're in. As for Utah State, they need a win.
And for Utah State, they need to win, and for Utah to lose.
They need to win.
Teams.
They need to win a Utah loss, and I believe a Boise loss as well. BYU not eligible, but they could play spoiler against a Utah team. Against a high and mighty Utah team. Onto the Pac-10, where it's clinched. Oregon was expected to make it here. They have been dominant all season in spite of a one loss to Oklahoma State. They've rallied off 9 in a row. But Washington State was truly a surprise. The Wazoo squad had a shaky start at 3-2, but it still looked promising for the future. But after their Week 6 bye, something seemed to click. They beat Cal, Oregon State, USC, and then we started to think something was up. Arizona State, and then they beat Stanford in a classic. And now they are headed, for the first time in school history, to the Pac-10 championship game. They've sat on the sidelines and watched everyone do it, including their big brother Washington twice. But now they're finally making their debut appearance. They haven't won the conference championship. They haven't won the conference championship in quite some time. Their last chip and trip to the Rose Bowl was in 1997. Under the SEC, Florida's already clinched in the East. As for the West, as we mentioned before, it's a grab bag. 4 teams are sitting at 5-2, 3 of which could make a trip to Atlanta. Auburn, win and you're in. Bama can play spoiler. Bama could play spoiler and let the 3 and 4 duel it out. Mississippi State needs a win and an Auburn and Tulane loss. Meanwhile, Tulane just needs a win and an Alabama win in the Iron Bowl. The SoCon is locked up. Thanks to a loss by William and Mary to Washington and Lee, the Old Dominion officially clinches the SoCon North Division. They are 10-1 and 7-1 in conference play. Their final game is a non-con matchup against Charlotte. Meanwhile, the SoCon South, Appalachian State clinches with the win over Georgia Southern. The Mountaineers are 6-1 in conference play and 10-1 overall. The battle in Nashville will be the final for Appalachian State, who has just been utterly dominant, holding the record all time for SoCon championships with 14. Old Dominion has never won the conference and are only in their second year of membership. To the Southland we go. Southland East, which is wide open, and it's a battle between the 2 teams who played in the championship game last season. Stephen F. Austin, still the favorite. Southeastern Louisiana, though, could play spoiler if a Sam Houston win was to come against the Lumberjacks. Meanwhile, Abilene Christian sitting on top. They can win the division, but they wouldn't be going to the conference championship since they're still in transition. Sam Houston is sitting in second.
I'm sure Abilene Christian fans are not happy about that at all.
They're currently on a motion. We'll have to see how that develops. A win by Abilene this week would clinch it. A loss by Sam Houston will also clinch it for Abilene. Sam Hugh wins, they're in. However, the race is not over. The race would have been over if Abilene were to be able to. But Hardin-Simmons is still in the running. They beat Sam Houston last week in double overtime. Sam Houston went from winning 9 in a row to losing their last 2 straight. Now, Sam Houston loses and Abilene loses. Hardin-Simmons wins. Hardin-Simmons, for the first time, will be going to the Southland Championship. The Cowpokes haven't won a conference championship in the Southland. Since you'd have to go all the way back to 1981. Meanwhile, Sam Houston's last title was in 2006. On to the Sun Belt. FAU had already clinched. They're 9-2. They could get a 10-win season with a win over FIU. And how about this? You want to talk about unpredictable stories. From losing 4 straight to start the season to winning all but one of your conference games, which was a loss to FAU, that's Troy, who has clinched a spot in the conference championship at 6-5. They're not favored to win their final game against South Alabama, which would make them a 6-6 conference champion. Or a 6-6 conference championship appearance, a 6-6 division winner. Ahead of 3 8-3 teams. North Texas, Arkansas State, and South Alabama. Even if South Alabama wins this week, they would not have the tiebreaker. Since they have lost 3 conference games. And now we have our final game, or our final conference to look at, the WAC. New Mexico State's locked up with a win by Pacific over Fresno State. Now the division comes down to the final weekend. Fresno State and San Jose State. Both teams facing off for the final time in conference, most likely. We don't know what will happen with San Jose State, but we do know Fresno's leaving for the Mountain West. Hawaii's in the mix as well. They play a Pacific squad who's known to upset teams. It's going to be a very interesting final week for Fresno State, Hawaii, and San Jose State. And that'll wrap our conference races. Now we're going to head to our week 13 matchups. It's rivalry week. And we begin on Turkey Day, Thanksgiving, for the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State, number 21 in the country, heading to Oxford to take on Ole Miss. Rebels favored by 7 at home against a ranked Mississippi State. It's going to be a very interesting game here. I like the Bulldogs to win it, though. Danny?
Yeah, give me the Bulldogs to win it. I believe Mississippi State will beat Ole Miss, but don't worry, both these teams are going to a bowl game, so it's just Brian Rice for a potential spot for Mississippi State.
All right. I assume Pig Bear is out. But we'll move on now to our call-exclusive game, a top 10 matchup. You don't want to miss this. Number 7, Baylor, heading to number 9, TCU, in an old Southwest Conference face-off, which we are dubbing the Rivalry, on Black Friday.
That's the name of it.
TCU favored by 2.5.
It also has a new name called the Blue Bonnet Bowl, but Rivalry sounds better. All
right. TCU favored by 2.5 in this one. I actually like the Bears to take it and go and improve to 8-1, improve to 11-1. Danny, who do you have?
Give me the Horned Frogs. I believe TCU, coming off their big win, will definitely prove that they are ready, and it's going to be loud in Rutgers and Fort Worth, Texas.
All right, up next, Black Friday. Another Black Friday game. I'm going to hand it off to Danny for this one as Dave Show takes on Miami.
Dave Show plays against one of their arch rivals in Miami. It's their last non-conference game before next year Dave Show joins the ACC for all sports. So it's going to be a major matchup for the Truckers, but as of right now, the Truckers are favored by.
5.
Sorry, my brain's not working. They're favored by 5, and I'm going to take the Truckers to win. Go take the over.
All right, I like Dave's show to win as well in advanced bowl eligibility. Number 14, Boise State heading on the road to Albuquerque to take on New Mexico on Friday. The Lobos are favored by 6 in the final game. Give me Boise to win this one comfortably. Danny?
Yeah, give me the Broncos to win as well. I know New Mexico was a great story, and I knew they were really hyped up to win big games, but I think they're now going to be facing against an angry Boise State, and I don't think they will like them angry.
A matchup that decides the Big East North Division. Syracuse heading number 10, Boston College. BC favored by 5. Who do you have?
Give me the Eagles to win. BC wins their final conference game in the Big East before the conference championship game.
All right, I like Boston College too, plus the points. Now, our next game is not any game, it's the game. Number 11, Michigan heads to Columbus to take on Ohio State with Big Ten championship implications on the line. Ohio State wins and Wisconsin loses, and the Buckeyes are in. It's definitely going to matter a lot more if Minnesota can pull off an upset. Who do you have in this one?
Give me the Wolverines. I believe Michigan wins.
I like Michigan as well. Ohio State won this game last season in an upset that kept the Wolverines out of the conference championship. Do the Buckeyes have what it takes to do it again? I think so. I like Ohio State in an upset here, and I don't take that lightly as a Michigan fan.
Yeah, that's a shocker.
Ohio State's been a pretty under the radar team. I think when the dust clears, we're going to get a Penn State Ohio State conference championship. I think that's my big bold take. On to the Commonwealth Cup. Who had Virginia Tech and Virginia playing to make the conference championship game this week? Certainly not whoever put it on ACC Network. VT favored by 7 in this one. The number 1 team in the country and the number 25 team in the country each could clinch a spot with the win here. Who do you have?
Give me the Hokies to win it. As much as I would like the Cowboys to win this, I believe the Hokies will win this one close. Give me a close matchup.
All right. That would put the Hokies into their 4th straight ACC championship game, potentially to win their 4th straight ACC title. Now, Mr. Clemson here is unconscious, I believe, but South Carolina heads to Clemson. Comes in favor by 17.5 on this one. All right, while he's asleep, give me the Gamecocks to exploit this team in a pivotal game. And he's left. All right, he couldn't take that. Number 16, Clemson, played really sloppy last week, and I think South Carolina has just enough to expose them. Give me SC in an upset. Danny?
I think the Tigers will win this one close. It'll be just only maybe at least 2 points, maybe at most 3.
Up next, the Iron Bowl. Bama playing for nothing but bragging rights this week. But a win by the Crimson Tide would shake up the division. Auburn favored by 1.5 on the road in this 3:30 p.m. game. Who do you have?
Give me the Tigers to win this one. I believe Auburn will win this one and clinch the division.
All right, I like Alabama in an upset here. Speaking of potential upsets, last season Tulane had a big upset at home against LSU, where they shut down the team en route. They shut down a team who was en route to win the SEC that season. Now Tulane heads to Baton Rouge, which has been a difficult spot for any team this year. LSU favored by 4. Tulane needs a win to stay in the conference race. I like Tulane in an upset. Who do you have?
And give me Tulane as well. I don't really think it should be an upset. I mean, considering LSU is aiming just to be 5-7. So give me Tulane to win this one and knock LSU out of any kind of bowl game.
On to Paul Bunyan's axe. Minnesota heads to number 12 Wisconsin in a frigid environment. There's no line for this one. I would figure Wisconsin would be favored by quite a bit, but as mentioned, I like Minnesota in an upset. Give me the Golden Gophers to get revenge against Whiskey. Danny?
On Wisconsin, plunge right through the line. Give me the Badgers to be jumping around Camp Randall, and I believe they're going to keep the axe in Madison.
A win by Whiskey in this one would put them in the Big Ten championship game. BYU heads to number 8 Utah. Speaking of potential upsets on Rivalry Week, the Holy War has been host to plenty. This is their final time facing off in conference. Both teams will end their season against each other in the future, as BYU heads to the Big 12, Utah to the Pac-12. Wasn't given a line for this, but I figure Utah will be favored by quite a bit. I like this Utah squad. Give me the Utes.
Give me the upset. Give me BYU to win this one. I believe BYU, they are playing for spoiler, and I think this is a prime spoiler spot for the Cougars.
All right, moving on. Last season, Stephen F. and Sam Houston met each other. They were both 10-win teams. They were both at least 10-win teams. Stephen F. Austin finished the regular season undefeated with the win over Sam Houston. And Sam Hugh wants blood. They need a win to head to San Antonio for the conference championship. And if they lose, it's out of their hands. They would need a whole bunch of good luck if they can't get this one. This line is even. Who do you have?
Give me the Bearcats. I believe the Bearcats will win this game close.
You picking the Bearcats? I like the Bearcats as well. They've been slipping lately, but I think they get their grip back and take this division over in their final matchup in this conference before they move to the WAC. One more game before our game of the week. A WAC matchup that decides the fate of the Pacific if Hawaii loses, by the way. San Jose State and Fresno State in the battle for the Milk Can. Battle for the Milk Can. Fresno at home, heading to the Mountain West next season. San Jose State certainly looking on in bitter hatred of their old-time rival. They're favored by 2.5, the Spartans are. Who do you have?
For me, give me the Bulldogs. I believe Fresno State will win this one close.
As I mentioned, bitter taste in San Jose State's mouth. I think they come in and return the favor. I think this game is a beatdown. Give me San Jose State big. All right, and now we wrap with our final game of the week of the season. We'll still have streams, obviously, but this is the last one we're calling game of the week because beyond this, we won't have multiple games in a week. Our next showdown to wrap the season is an old-time Big East rivalry that will decide the fate of the Big East South Division. It's the Backyard Brawl. Number 15, Pittsburgh, taking on number 18, West Virginia in Morgantown. The Pittsburgh Panthers having one of their best seasons. They can get a 10th win this week against the Mountaineers. Their last conference championship came in 2017. Meanwhile, West Virginia's last title came as a part of a three-peat in 2018, 2019, and 2020. They played in the 2021 championship and lost. Pitt's last showing was in 2018 when they faced against West Virginia back when they were in different divisions. I'm sure if Pig Bear was here, he would have picked West Virginia to win big. The Mountaineers are favored -5 in this one. Who do you have?
Country roads take me home to the place that I belong.
West Virginia.
And that will be Pittsburgh. Give me the upset.
The Pitt upset. I'm picking West Virginia in this one to wrap it up. I I've been ranking as the AP. I've had them above Pitt for the longest time. This game's in Morgantown. It's going to be rocking. It's going to be raucous. It's going to be insane. I think this game's going to be an all-timer. Give me West Virginia to win and move on to the championship game against Boston College. Thank you all for watching today's stream. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of the 2KU Weekly Podcast, where we'll be talking about all that happened on Rivalry Week, looking ahead to the conference championship games, talking about the D2 playoffs. And then the week after that, our ceremony, week 15, December 3rd, we'll be talking about the SCS playoffs, and we'll reveal our award winners for the 2023 season. Thank you all for watching this episode of the 2KU Weekly Podcast. Don't forget to join the Discord, of course, for live updates. I'm sure there's going to be some conference realignment news coming up, particularly out of the Mountain West, maybe. Keep an eye on that. And so long from the 2KU.